The ballroom fell into a stunned silence as my ex-husband's voice cut through the chatter like a knife. Still couldn't find someone better. Elena. After all these years, Ryan Caldwell stood there in his perfectly tailored charcoal suit, Brooke on his arm wearing that same arrogant half-smile I once mistook for confidence. Dozens of eyes from our old high school classmates darted between us. The air grew thick with expensive perfume and second-hand judgment. I felt the old wound twist. But I didn't flinch. Then before I could respond, the heavy doors burst open and a small familiar voice rang out clear and bright across the room. "Mom. Mommy, there you are." My 5-year-old son Noah ran straight toward me, his little navy blazer flapping eyes lighting up with pure joy. In that single moment, everything changed. The man who had walked out on me 6 years ago, while I held the ultrasound photo of the child he would never know, froze like he'd been struck. Because the boy racing across the polished floor looked exactly like him. I never planned to come to the 20-year reunion. The engraved card had sat on my kitchen counter for 2 weeks gathering dust beside the coffee maker. Lincoln Park High School, Chicago. The same city where Ryan and I had once built what I thought was a future. 6 years ago, on a night much like this, one cold rain hammering the windows, he had slid divorce papers across our small dining table and said the words that still echoed in quiet moments. "I need more than this, Elena. I need a real shot at success." I had been holding the ultrasound image in my lap, one strong heartbeat, our son. I raised Noah alone in a modest townhouse on the north side. While Ryan married into wealth and climbed the corporate ladder at his father-in-law's real estate empire, I went back to architecture school part-time, built my own firm from late nights and sheer will, and learned how to be both mother and father. Harper's sustainable design wasn't flashy, but it was mine, solid, growing, and respected in Chicago's development circles. So, why did I finally say yes to the reunion? Maybe it was the quiet sense that I had nothing left to prove. Or perhaps some small part of me wanted to close the chapter for good. I chose a simple black dress with elbow sleeves, nothing revealing, nothing trying too hard. My hair was swept into a low chignon. The only jewelry I wore was the thin gold necklace Noah had picked out with his allowance last Mother's Day. I looked like what I was, a woman who had rebuilt her life with dignity. The Drake Hotel ballroom sparkled under crystal chandeliers. Laughter bounced off the walls as former classmates compared careers, vacations, and private school admissions for their kids. I found a quiet table near the back, nursing a glass of sparkling water, exchanging polite smiles with people who vaguely remembered me as that quiet girl who married Ryan. Then he entered. Ryan moved through the room like he owned it, shaking hands, clapping backs. He had filled out in that polished, powerful way successful men do, broad shoulders, sharp jaw, the kind of presence that commanded attention. Brooke Caldwell, his wife, clung to his arm in a deep emerald gown that probably cost more than my car. She was the polished daughter of one of Chicago's oldest real estate families, and she looked every bit the part. Our eyes met across the room. Recognition flashed in his, followed by something darker, amusement perhaps. He excused himself from a group and walked straight toward my table, Brooke trailing a few steps behind with cool curiosity. "Elena Harper," he announced loud enough for nearby tables to turn. "Didn't think you'd show up, still doing the single mom thing, couldn't find someone better after all this time." A few awkward chuckles rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "That's his ex." The familiar sting of humiliation rose in my chest, but I kept my expression steady, my breathing even. I had practiced this calm in therapy sessions, and long nights staring at the ceiling. I set my glass down. "Better is subjective, Ryan," I replied, my voice carrying clearly. "Some of us were busy raising a child you left behind." His smile tightened. Brooke's eyebrows lifted slightly. Before the tension could thicken further, the ballroom doors swung open again. Small footsteps echoed across the marble. "Mom, Mommy, there you are." Noah darted through the crowd, dodging legs, his face lit with excitement. Sarah, our nanny, followed apologetically behind him. He launched himself into my arms, wrapping his small body around me with the kind of trust only a child can give so freely. I caught him inhaling the sweet scent of his hair shampoo and crayons and pure innocence. "Hey, sweetheart," I murmured, holding him close. "You were supposed to wait downstairs with Sarah. I missed you," he said simply. Then pulled back and grinned. "They have a chocolate fountain." In the heavy silence that followed, every head turned from my son to Ryan. The resemblance was unmistakable, the same hazel eyes with their slight upward tilt, the same cowlick on the left side of his forehead, the same determined set of the jaw even at 5 years old. Noah was a living mirror of the man standing 10 feet away. Ryan's face drained of color. His mouth opened, but no words came. Brooke's hand flew to her throat. "Elena!" Ryan finally managed, his voice hoarse. "Is he—" I stroked Noah's back, keeping my tone calm and matter-of-fact for my son's sake. "This is my son Noah. He's 5.5. The math landed hard. 6 years ago, the night he had walked out. Noah looked up curiously at the tall stranger staring at him. "Mom, who's that man?" I gently turned his face back to mine. "Let's go find that chocolate fountain downstairs, okay, buddy?" As I stood holding Noah's small hand firmly in mine, I felt the weight of 50 pairs of eyes following us. My steps were steady. For the first time in years, the past didn't feel like a chain around my ankles. It felt like something I was finally walking away from on my own terms. The heavy doors closed behind us with a soft click, but the silence we left in the ballroom felt louder than any gasp. I kept Noah's hand tucked securely in mine as we moved down the wide hallway toward the lower level, my heels clicking steadily on the marble. His excitement about the chocolate fountain bubbled over in a stream of chatter oblivious to the earthquake he had just caused upstairs. I smiled down at him, brushing a stray lock from his forehead, grateful for the simple anchor he provided. 6 years of building walls had not prepared me for how quickly they could tremble. Back in the ballroom, I knew the whispers had already ignited into a firestorm. Ryan had always thrived on control-curated image strategic alliances, the perfect wife from the right family. Seeing a miniature version of himself sprint across the floor and call another woman Mom had shattered that facade in front of the very people whose opinions once mattered to him. I could picture Brooke's frozen expression, the way her fingers would tighten on his arm, calculating damage control while her own carefully constructed world tilted. I had not come seeking confrontation. The decision to attend had been quieter than that, a quiet test to see if old scars still pulled. Yet when Ryan had approached my table, drink in hand, and ego on full display, the years had melted away for a moment. His voice carried that familiar mix of charm and cruelty as he leaned in, slightly ensuring those nearby could hear every word. "Elena Harper," he had said, projecting just enough. "Didn't expect to see you here. Still doing the single mom thing, couldn't find someone better after all these years." The words landed with precision, designed to remind everyone of the hierarchy he believed still existed. A few former classmates shifted uncomfortably while others leaned in, hungry for drama. Brooke stood a few feet away in her emerald gown, her posture impeccable, offering a polite but distant smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was assessing me, the ex-wife who had apparently failed to move on. I felt the heat rise in my chest, the old ache of abandonment flaring briefly. Memories threatened to surface, the rain-lashed night, the divorce papers, my hand, trembling over the ultrasound photo I never got to show him. But I had learned long ago that showing pain only gave him power. Instead, I met his gaze evenly. "Better is subjective, Ryan." I replied, my voice calm and clear enough to carry. "Some of us were busy raising the child you left when I told you I was pregnant, while you were busy upgrading your life." A ripple moved through the surrounding tables. Someone's glass clinked awkwardly. Ryan's jaw tightened, the charming smile slipping into something sharper. Brooke's eyebrows arched, her interest now unmistakably sharper. For a man who had spent years rewriting his narrative as the ambitious, self-made success story, being publicly reminded of his abandoned pregnant wife was not part of the script. He opened his mouth to respond, likely something dismissive about moving on or mutual decisions, when the doors swung open. Noah's voice cut through everything. Mommy, there you are." The shift in the room was visceral. Heads turned in unison. Ryan's face went from flushed confrontation to ghostly pale in seconds. I watched the recognition hit him like a physical blow, the boy's features, the unmistakable Caldwell stamp on a child he had never met. Noah didn't notice the tension. He simply ran to me with the pure, unfiltered love only a 5-year-old can offer without reservation. I caught him easily, lifting him briefly before setting him down and taking his hand. Sarah hovered apologetically near the entrance, but I gave her a small nod. Noah's warmth against my side grounded me as the weight of dozens of stairs pressed in. Ryan took one involuntary step forward, his usual composure fractured. "Elena." His voice came out rough, almost disbelieving. That's my son," I said simply, meeting his eyes one last time. "Noah is 5.5. The timeline needed no explanation. 6 years ago, the night he chose a faster path over the family we had started. Brooke's hand moved to Ryan's sleeve, a silent command for restraint, but her own expression had tightened into something colder, calculation mixed with alarm. Noah glanced up at the tall man staring down at him with an intensity that made even a child pause. "Mom, who's that?" I turned my son gently away from the spectacle. "Just someone from long ago, sweetheart. Let's go find that chocolate fountain you wanted." As we walked out together, Noah chattering happily about the desserts waiting downstairs, I felt the eyes follow us. Not with pity this time, but with a new kind of curiosity. The woman they had quietly dismissed moments earlier was leaving with a child who looked exactly like the Golden Boy CEO. The carefully constructed image Ryan had built was already cracking. Downstairs, away from the ballroom lights and prying gazes, I helped Noah dip strawberries into the fountain, watching chocolate drip onto his small fingers. He laughed, completely unaware of the storm upstairs. In that ordinary moment, I felt a deep, steadying breath fill my lungs. I had not come for revenge. But as the pieces of Ryan's perfect evening shattered behind us, I realized the past had finally stepped into the light, on my terms, not his. The chocolate fountain had barely begun to hold Noah's full attention when I felt the shift in the air behind us. Heavy footsteps approached from the grand staircase. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Ryan's presence had always carried a certain weight, and tonight it felt like an approaching storm. "Elena, wait." His voice was lower now, stripped of the earlier theatrical confidence. I turned slowly, keeping Noah's small hand firmly in mine. My son had a strawberry halfway to his mouth, chocolate smeared on his cheek, but he paused when he sensed the tension. Sarah stood a respectful distance away, ready to step in if needed. Ryan stopped a few feet from us. His face was pale under the warm lights of the lower lobby, the sharp lines of his jaw clenched tight. Brooke remained at the top of the stairs, watching like a hawk, her arms crossed over her emerald gown. A small crowd of curious classmates had drifted down behind them, drawn by the scent of scandal. Noah looked up at the tall stranger, tilting his head with innocent curiosity. The resemblance was almost painful in its clarity. This close under brighter lights, there was no denying it. The same hazel eyes with flecks of gold, the same way his brows drew together when he concentrated, even the subtle cowlick that refused to be tamed. Ryan stared at him as if seeing a ghost. "Is he mine?" Ryan asked, his voice barely above a whisper, though the words carried in the quiet space. I felt Noah's fingers tighten slightly around mine. He might not have understood the full weight of the question, but children sense when the world around them changes. I placed my free hand gently on his shoulder, steadying both of us. "This is Noah," I said calmly, my tone even and controlled. "My son. He's 5.5 years old." The math hung between us, heavy and undeniable. 6 years ago. The divorce papers. The night I had wanted to tell him about the pregnancy but never got the chance because he had already decided our life together wasn't enough. Ryan took a shaky step closer, his eyes never leaving Noah. He looks just like me at that age. The pictures. My mother used to say I had that exact expression. Brooke descended the stairs, now her heels clicking sharply. She stopped beside her husband, slipping her arm through his in a gesture that looked supportive but felt possessive. Her smile was tight, professional, the kind perfected in boardrooms and country clubs. Ryan, darling, perhaps this isn't the place, she murmured, though. Her eyes flicked over Noah with clinical assessment. Noah shifted closer to my leg, pressing against me. Mom, why is that man staring at me? I knelt down to his level, brushing chocolate from his cheek with my thumb. He's someone I knew a long time ago, sweetheart. Before you were born. My voice stayed soft, warm, focused entirely on my son. Remember how we talked about how families can look different? Some have 2 parents, some have 1, and that's okay. You and I make a great team. Noah nodded slowly, though his gaze kept darting back to Ryan. Children are remarkably perceptive. Even at 5, he could feel the undercurrent of emotion swirling around us. Ryan crouched down awkwardly, trying to bring himself to Noah's eye level. His expensive watch caught the light as his hand reached out hesitantly, then stopped mid-air. Noah. His voice cracked. I didn't know about you. The words landed like stones. I felt a flicker of old anger rise, but I pushed it down. This wasn't the time or place for that conversation. Not in front of my son, not surrounded by watching eyes. That's enough for tonight, I said, rising to my feet and lifting Noah into my arms. He was getting heavy, but I welcomed the solid weight of him. We're going home. Elena, please. Ryan stood as well, his composure fracturing further. We need to talk about this. He's my son, too. Brooke's hand tightened on his arm, but she said nothing, her expression a careful mask. I could see the calculations running behind her eyes. Reputation, management, potential scandal, the impact on their carefully built empire. I met Ryan's gaze directly, my voice low but firm enough for him to hear every word. 6 years ago, you made your choice very clear. You chose success over family. You chose her world over the one we were building. Noah is my son. I carried him, I birthed him. I've raised him every single day since. You don't get to rewrite that history because it's suddenly inconvenient. Noah rested his head on my shoulder, his small arms wrapping around my neck. The trust in that gesture steadied me more than anything else could have. I turned and walked toward the exit, Sarah falling in step beside us. Behind me I heard the murmurs grow louder, Ryan calling my name once more, but I didn't look back. The cool night air of Chicago hit us as we stepped outside. Valet brought my car around a sensible black SUV, nothing flashy. I buckled Noah into his seat, kissing his forehead as he yawned, the excitement of the evening finally catching up to him. As we pulled away from the Drake Hotel, the glittering lights fading in the rearview mirror, I glanced at my son in the mirror. His eyes were already drifting shut, chocolate still faintly staining his fingers. In the quiet hum of the engine, I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The past had finally caught up to us. But this time I wasn't the one left standing in the rain. This time I was the one driving home with everything that truly mattered safe beside me. The drive home was quiet, except for the soft hum of the engine and Noah's even breathing from the back seat. Chicago's lights blurred past the windows as rain began to fall again, gentle this time, tapping against the glass like an old familiar melody. By the time I pulled into the driveway of our townhouse in Lincoln Park, Noah was fast asleep, his small hand still clutching the napkin filled with chocolate-dipped strawberries Sarah had wrapped for him. I carried him inside, his head heavy on my shoulder, and navigated the familiar stairs to his room. The townhouse wasn't large or luxurious, but it was warm, filled with bookshelves, soft lighting, and drawings taped to the walls. I changed him into pajamas, wiped the last traces of chocolate from his face, and tucked him under the dinosaur quilt he loved. For a long moment I sat on the edge of his bed, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest. My son. My entire world in one small, trusting body. My phone had been vibrating steadily in my bag since we left the hotel. I finally checked it once Noah was settled. 23 missed calls, dozens of texts, most from Ryan, a few from unknown numbers that I suspected belonged to Brooke's people. One message stood out. We need to talk, immediately. He's my son, Elena. You can't keep him from me. I set the phone down on the kitchen counter and poured myself a glass of water. The cool liquid grounded me as I leaned against the sink, staring out at the rain-streaked window. 6 years ago, I would have answered on the first ring, desperate for any sign that he regretted leaving. Tonight, I felt only a quiet, steely resolve. The next morning came too quickly. Noah woke up full of questions over breakfast, his little legs swinging under the table as he ate oatmeal. Mom, was that tall man my daddy? The question didn't surprise me, but it still landed with weight. I sat across from him, meeting his eyes with honesty. Yes, sweetheart. He is the man who helped bring you into the world. But being a dad means showing up every day. He hasn't done that. You and I have built a really good life together, haven't we? Noah thought about it. Spoon paused halfway to his mouth. I like our life. Can we still go to the park after school? I smiled, reaching over to ruffle his hair. Absolutely. That afternoon, while Noah was at preschool, the calls intensified. Ryan left 3 voicemails, his voice shifting from demanding to pleading. Brooke's lawyer sent a formal email requesting a meeting and suggesting DNA confirmation, though we both knew it was unnecessary. I forwarded everything to my own attorney, a sharp woman named Margaret, who had been with me since the early days of building my firm. What neither Ryan nor Brooke understood yet was that Harper Sustainable Design wasn't just a small architecture studio anymore. Over the past 4 years, we had become a key partner in green building materials and innovative design for several major Chicago developments. One of those projects, the flagship Lakeshore Tower, was currently the crown jewel of Caldwell Enterprises, Ryan's company. His father-in-law's money and reputation were riding on its success. And my firm held critical sway over the sustainability certifications and supplier contracts that could make or break their timeline. I hadn't planned it this way. Success had come from necessity, long nights after Noah went to bed, relentless networking, and a refusal to let my son grow up feeling the sting of instability I had known after Ryan left. But now that power sat quietly in my hands, waiting. That evening, after Noah was bathed and read to sleep with his favorite story about a brave little dinosaur, my phone rang again. This time I answered. Elena. Ryan's voice was rough, exhausted. We have to discuss this like adults. He's my blood. I walked to the living room window, looking out at the wet street below. Blood doesn't give you automatic rights, Ryan. Not after you signed them away 6 years ago. Not after you told me our life, our future family wasn't enough for your ambitions. There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing, could almost picture him pacing in whatever sleek downtown apartment he shared with Brooke. I made a mistake, he said finally. I was young, ambitious. I didn't know what I was throwing away. You knew exactly what you were throwing away, I replied, my voice steady. I was holding the ultrasound photo when you handed me the papers. You didn't even let me speak. Another silence. When he spoke again, there was a desperate edge. Brooke wants this handled quietly. The board is already asking questions after last night. Just let me see him. Once. We can work out something reasonable. Reasonable, I echoed. Like the way you walked out on a pregnant wife because a better opportunity appeared. I'm not interested in reasonable, Ryan. I'm interested in protecting my son from being treated as an inconvenience or a PR problem. I heard a woman's voice in the background, Brooke, sharp and low. Ryan's tone shifted. We can make this difficult if you want, he said. Custody battles get ugly. I have resources. A quiet laugh escaped me, not bitter, just tired. Resources. That's always been your answer, hasn't it? Money. Connections. Image. But here's something you should know before you threaten me. My company is overseeing the sustainability compliance for Lakeshore Tower. One word from me and your delays turn into serious financial penalties. Your father-in-law won't be pleased. The line went silent. I could feel the power shift through the phone. I'm not looking to destroy you, I continued. I want peace for Noah. That means clear boundaries. We'll handle this through lawyers. No surprise visits, no public scenes. If you truly want to be part of his life someday, prove it by respecting the damage you caused first. I hung up before he could respond, setting the phone face down on the coffee table. The rain outside had picked up again, drumming steadily against the windows. I walked upstairs and stood in the doorway of Noah's room, listening to his soft breathing. I had spent years turning pain into purpose, building something solid, raising a boy who felt safe and loved. Whatever came next, legal battles, negotiations, or Ryan's attempts at redemption, I would face it the same way I had faced everything since that stormy night 6 years ago. With calm, with clarity, and with my son's future held carefully in my hands. The following days blurred into a carefully orchestrated dance of lawyers and veiled threats. Ryan's team moved fast, as I knew they would. By midweek, formal requests arrived: supervised visitation, DNA confirmation, purely procedural, they claimed, and hints of a custody petition if I remained unreasonable. Brooks' influence was clear in the polished language and aggressive timeline. They wanted this contained before it reached the boardroom or the society pages. I agreed to one mediation session, but on my terms. Margaret, my attorney, secured a neutral conference room on the 42nd floor of a downtown building with sweeping views of the Chicago River. When I arrived, Ryan was already seated, flanked by 2 lawyers in dark suits. Brooke had chosen not to attend in person, but her presence loomed in the stack of documents and the expensive silence. I sat across from them in a tailored navy blouse and trousers, my posture relaxed but unyielding. No trembling hands, no raised voice. Just the quiet confidence of someone who had rebuilt her life brick by brick, while the man opposite me had simply traded up. Ryan looked exhausted. The golden boy glow from the reunion had faded, replaced by shadowed eyes and a jaw clenched too tightly. He leaned forward as soon as the mediator finished opening remarks. "This doesn't have to be adversarial, Elena. He's my son. I have a right to know him." I studied him for a moment, noting how the years had sharpened his features without softening the self-interest beneath them. "You had a right 6 years ago," I said evenly. "When I was pregnant and terrified and you chose a faster route to success. You terminated that right the moment you walked away." One of his lawyers slid a folder across the table. "We're prepared to offer generous financial support and structured visitation, in the child's best interest." I didn't touch the folder. Instead, I nodded to Margaret. She placed our own documents on the table with deliberate calm. "We have a different proposal," she said. "Full genetic confirmation has already been arranged privately and confirms paternity. In exchange, Mr. Caldwell will voluntarily terminate his parental rights. No visitation, no future claims. A comprehensive NDA covering any discussion of Noah or this situation." Ryan's face darkened. "You want me to sign away my own son?" "I want you to stop pretending this is about Noah," I replied, meeting his eyes directly. "This is about protecting your image, your position at Caldwell Enterprises, and your marriage. You only want access now because a 5-year-old version of yourself appeared in public and threatened the narrative you've built." He started to speak, but I continued, my voice steady. "I also want you to understand the full picture. Harper Sustainable Design holds the key sustainability contracts and material certifications for the Lakeshore Tower project, your flagship development, the one your father-in-law has tied significant capital and reputation to. If this becomes a public custody battle, those certifications could face unexpected delays, reviews, questions about leadership stability." The room grew very still. Ryan's lawyers exchanged quick glances. His face went pale as the implications settled. "You'd really do that?" he asked, almost whispering. "Tank a billion-dollar project just to keep me away from my son?" I leaned forward slightly, my tone calm but edged with steel. "I built my company while raising Noah alone. I worked through nights, missed social events, and turned down easier paths so my son would never feel the instability you left us with." "I'm not interested in destruction, Ryan. I'm interested in peace. Sign the agreement. Walk away cleanly. Focus on the life you chose. Or we can let the courts, the press, and your board decide how this unfolds." Brooke's influence cracked through in the next hour of back and forth. Her lawyers pushed hard, trying to negotiate partial rights and financial settlements. Ryan alternated between anger, regret, and bargaining. At one point, he looked at me with something almost like genuine pain. "I think about that night," he said quietly during a short break. "I was scared. Ambitious. I convinced myself you and the baby would hold me back. I was wrong. I felt a flicker of the old hurt, but it no longer consumed me. Being wrong doesn't erase the years I spent doing this alone. Noah doesn't need a father who appears only when it's convenient, or when his absence becomes embarrassing. He needs stability, and I've given him that. In the end, after tense phone calls to Brooke and whispered conferences with his legal team, Ryan picked up the pen. His hand shook slightly as he signed the documents terminating his parental rights. The scratch of ink on paper sounded final in the quiet room. When it was done, he looked up at me defeated. "You've changed, Elena." "No," I said, gathering my copies. "I finally became who I was always meant to be." I left the building into the late afternoon light, the Chicago River glittering below. For the first time in weeks, the weight on my chest felt lighter. Not because I had won, but because I had protected what mattered most. Noah's future would not be dictated by Ryan's guilt or Brooke's calculations. That evening I picked Noah up from preschool. He ran to me with his usual boundless energy, showing me a painting of a dinosaur family. As we walked to the car, his small hand in mine, I felt the pieces of our life settle back into place. Whatever came next, whatever attempts at reconciliation or further pressure might arise, I was ready. I had built more than a career in these 6 years. I had built a home, a sanctuary, and no one was going to take that from us. 3 months passed in a quiet rhythm that felt like breathing again. Mornings began with Noah's sleepy voice calling for pancakes. Afternoons ended with us walking along the lakefront, his small hand in mine, as he pointed out boats and seagulls. My firm continued its steady growth under strong day-to-day leadership, while I protected the time that mattered most. The Lakeshore Tower project moved forward without major delays, though I heard through industry channels that the internal atmosphere had grown tense. Then the news broke quietly, the way powerful circles often handle their embarrassments. Ryan Caldwell had been removed as CEO of Caldwell Enterprises. The official statement cited personal conduct issues and strategic differences. Those who knew the full story understood the real reasons: the reunion scandal, the sudden questions about his past, and the growing pressure from his father-in-law to contain the damage. Brooke filed for divorce shortly after. The settlement, I imagined, was swift and brutal. I didn't celebrate. There was no satisfaction in watching someone fall when I had once loved him. Only a quiet acknowledgement that choices have consequences. The rain returned on a Thursday night, the kind of steady Chicago downpour that turned streets into mirrors. I had just finished reading Noah his dinosaur story and was turning off the hallway light when the doorbell rang. Once, then again more insistent. Through the camera feed on my phone, I saw him standing on the front steps, soaked to the bone. Ryan. His expensive coat clung to his frame hair plastered to his forehead, shoulders slumped in a way I had never seen. He looked smaller, broken in a manner that went beyond the loss of title and money. I stood in the darkened hallway for a long moment, listening to the rain hammer the roof. Noah slept soundly upstairs, safe in his dinosaur quilt. Part of me wanted to ignore the bell. Another part, the one that had survived that stormy night 6 years ago, knew I needed to face this final chapter. I opened the door but left the chain on, creating a deliberate barrier between us. "Elena," he said, voice raw. Water streamed down his face, mixing with what might have been tears. "Please, just 5 minutes." I studied him through the gap. The man who had once commanded rooms now looked like someone the city had chewed up and spat out. "It's late, Ryan. Noah is sleeping." I lost everything he whispered. The company, Brooke, the house. They cut me out completely. I have nowhere else to go. The words hung between us, heavy with desperation. I felt a pang, not pity exactly, but the echo of old grief. This was the man I had once planned a life with, the father of my child. "You're asking me for help?" I asked quietly. He leaned his forehead against the doorframe, eyes closed. "I think about him every day. Noah. I see him in my dreams. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you. Let me be part of his life. I'll do anything." I opened the door wider, but still didn't invite him in. The rain blew onto the foyer floor as I stood there in my soft gray sweater, arms crossed. 6 years ago, I stood in the rain too, I said. Pregnant. Terrified. Holding ultrasound pictures you never even looked at. You told me our life wasn't enough for your ambitions. You left us with nothing but a signature on divorce papers." Ryan's shoulders shook. I was selfish, arrogant. I convinced myself I was doing what was best for my future. I was wrong, Elena. So wrong. I held up a hand, stopping him. "This isn't about your regret. It's about Noah. He's happy. He feels safe. He doesn't lie awake wondering why his father didn't want him. I won't let your guilt or your crisis disrupt that peace." He looked up at me, eyes desperate. "He's my son." "He's my son," I corrected gently but firmly. "The papers you signed made that official. You chose your path, Ryan. Now you have to live with it. Get help. Build something real this time. Maybe one day when he's older and ready, we can revisit this as adults. But not like this. Not when you're drowning and looking for a life raft." The rain continued its steady rhythm around us. For a long moment, Ryan simply stood there, water running down his face. Then he nodded slowly, as if something inside him had finally accepted the truth. "I'm sorry," he said, the words barely audible. "For all of it." I closed the door softly, sliding the deadbolt into place. The sound echoed through the quiet house like a period at the end of a long sentence. I leaned back against the wood, eyes closed, listening as his footsteps retreated down the wet walkway. Upstairs, Noah slept peacefully, unaware of the man who had stood on our doorstep. I walked to his room and stood in the doorway, watching the gentle rise and fall of his small chest. The anger I once carried had faded into something quieter, acceptance, perhaps even a touch of compassion for the man Ryan might still become. But compassion had its limits. My priority was the boy sleeping under the dinosaur quilt, the life we had built together, the future that belonged to us. I turned off the hall light and went downstairs, the sound of rain now a comforting lullaby against the windows. For the first time in 6 years, the chapter felt truly closed. 6 months later, the sharp edges of that reunion night had softened into something distant, like a story I once lived, rather than a wound I still carried. Chicago had slipped into autumn, painting the trees along our street in warm golds and reds. Life had settled into a beautiful, ordinary rhythm that felt like the deepest kind of victory. Noah started kindergarten in September. Each morning I walked him to the school gate, watching his small backpack bounce as he ran to join his friends. He was thriving, curious, kind, and secure in a way that filled my heart every single day. In the evenings we cooked together, read stories, and built elaborate dinosaur worlds across the living room floor. My firm continued to grow steadily, but I had stepped back from the most demanding projects, choosing instead to be present for the moments that truly mattered. One crisp Saturday afternoon, Noah and I walked along the lakefront path. The water sparkled under a pale blue sky, and a light breeze tugged at our jackets. He had been quieter than usual, swinging our joined hands as we walked. "Mom," he said eventually, his voice small but serious. "Was that man at the party really my dad?" I slowed our pace and guided us toward a bench overlooking the water. We sat down and I turned to face him, fully brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Yes, sweetheart, he is the man who helped bring you into the world." I kept my voice gentle, honest. But being a dad is much more than that. It's showing up every day. It's choosing to be there when things are hard, not just when it's easy. He wasn't ready to do that back then. Noah thought about this, kicking his legs slowly. "Does he miss me?" "Maybe he does," I said. "But missing someone doesn't always mean you get to be part of their life. What matters most is that you are safe, loved, and never have to wonder if you're wanted. You and I make a really strong team, don't we?" He nodded, leaning against my side. "I like our team, just you and me." I wrapped my arm around him, holding him close as the waves lapped gently against the shore. In that moment, I felt the last remnants of bitterness dissolve. I had not raised my son to hate his father. I had raised him to know his own worth, to understand that love is shown through actions, not just words. Looking back, I realized the best revenge wasn't loud or cruel. It wasn't about watching Ryan lose his title, his marriage, or his status. The real victory was simpler and far more powerful, waking up every morning in a home filled with peace, raising a kind and confident child, and building a life I was proud of on my own terms. I was no longer the woman who once stood crying in the rain, pregnant and abandoned. I was Elena Harper, mother architect, and the author of my own second act. The pain of the past had forged me into someone stronger, clearer, and more compassionate. It taught me that financial independence isn't just about money, it's about freedom. The freedom to choose peace, the freedom to protect what matters, the freedom to stand tall even when the world tries to knock you down. As the sun began to dip lower over the lake, Noah squeezed my hand. "Can we get hot chocolate on the way home?" I smiled, standing up and pulling him into a hug. Absolutely. We walked back along the path as the city lights started to flicker on two small figures against a vast skyline. My heart felt full in a way I once thought impossible. To anyone listening who might be going through their own storm, whether it's a painful divorce, betrayal, or the heavy weight of starting over, I want you to know this. The night may feel endless, but morning always comes. Your worth was never dependent on the person who left. Your future is not defined by your lowest moment. Cry if you need to. Grieve what was lost. Then dry your eyes, roll up your sleeves, and begin building something new. The best revenge is a life well lived with dignity, love, and quiet strength. If this story touched something in you, if you're navigating your own second act, or simply needed to hear that you're not alone, I'd love to know. Leave a comment below and tell me where you're listening from or what part of this journey spoke to you most. Your stories matter. They remind all of us that healing is possible. Thank you for spending this time with me. We have many more powerful stories to share, stories of resilience, transformation, and hope. If you haven't already, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss when a new one arrives. Until next time, keep building your life with courage. You are stronger than you know.